proudly South African. Please welcome Eustace Mashimbye up on stage. And Eustace is joined by Sanele Zulu, the CEO and co-founder of Green Youth Network. Eustace, how does sustainable sourcing impact the local economy and the growth of local businesses?
If you think of the importance, I'll speak in the context of the work we do as Proudly South African, which is really about the importance of sourcing locally, which is really strategic sourcing and sustainable sourcing. What COVID taught us was the fact that issues like food security and security of supply really kick in when you have global supply chain disruptions like we had during the pandemic. And so we had to find a way to fend for ourselves. Because of global supply chain disruptions from our traditional sources of supply, we had to find a way to then fend for ourselves. And that then led us to taking our conversations beyond just saying to people they must buy locally, but saying they must now start sourcing strategically and in a sustainable way that will help preserve the environment as well. Environmentalists tell us all the time that one of the ways in which we contaminate and pollute our environment is through transportation. And so if you buy within the community in which you operate, if you think of food, if you buy from local farmers, you help preserve the environment, because then you have less, on the road, less fumes, etc., that exhumed by those who would then be bringing the products to you. So there's an array of things, including benefits that come with sustainable sourcing. The biggest ones in the context of the work we do is really about, those businesses are then in a position to can create jobs because you're buying from them. So the communities benefit. As the communities benefit, then you have those who are making the products getting into a position where they need to employ more people. So people acquire skills. That contributes to the sustainability of the economy itself. Because what you don't want is a situation where you have more and more people falling out of jobs, such that you have less and less people who can afford to then even source. Because even businesses that depend on us as customers, those with consumer-facing products, those who depend on us customers buying their products, will not be in a position to have customers that can afford their products. If you think of those who are in a B2B space, the biggest challenge is those businesses also have customers that must be able to afford their products. And so all of us have a role to play. And so sourcing with that in mind contributes to the sustainability of the environment, of the economy, and all the other indicators that are critical. Yeah.
Most definitely. Sanele, how do we galvanize the youth? How do we train our youth to partake in the local economy?
Yeah. Thank you so much once again to the organizers of the conference. I think for me it's always exciting to see young people on the platform. So I think I would like to give them a round of applause if we can. To even have a young person here, I think it's one of the ways, by the way. So I think as Sanele from the Green Youth Network, firstly, there's kind of like a systematic approach when you deal with young people. And I think for me it's also to say you must create some awareness campaigns, because it's not that young people don't know, they're just not informed, So I think for us, it's very important to firstly create some form of awareness campaigns. We must not assume that they know, right? That's the first part. The second part is that young people are not useless at all. And, I preach that everywhere I go, to say they are just used less, And for me, that is so important, because then, yes, you can clap for that, please. Because I'll tell you why. I think we recently had a program now in the Eastern Cape where we did a baseline study. What I think the CEO of that company did was to involve young people. Because I think we must understand as well that the biggest threat of sustainability is young people. Because the future that we are trying to, save is for the young people. So if we don't get young people in terms of planning, in terms of designing the solutions, we don't want to go to young people and say, this is what we have come up with as a solution. But we want to go to young people and say, we want a solution, get involved. And if you get them involved, you'll be surprised at the ideas that they'll come up with. So the second one, of course, once you've made them aware, then you train them. But train them on things that matter to them. Don't assume that you know what they need. Because immediately when you say to young people, this is what you need, they'll tell you, we don't need this. And then you'll go around the circle, trying to figure out what are we doing wrong as a company. Our CSI projects are not working. It's because you assumed what they needed. But if you go there and ask them, what do you guys need? They will tell what they need. They need skills. They need jobs. They need internships. And some of the people that are here, like Coca-Cola, CCPSA, Polyco is here, they're doing some of those work, and we're partnering up with them as well. But I think for me, it's always exciting to know that if there are CEOs and there are corporate companies that are willing to involve young people in designing and planning for the solutions, then I think we'll be making headway.
Yeah. Tell us, Sanele, how do we and how can we strengthen our current local value chains to maximize sustainability?
So I think for me, it's about also getting young people involved in the opportunities that exist. When we sit with corporates as well as government officials, we always say that when there's opportunity, please do some set-asides specifically for young people, right? And I think for me, when we talk about localization, my brother would agree with me to say we cannot leave young people out. And if we want to solve some of the problems that we have in sustainability, we must get them involved. And I think for me, it's important, therefore, to talk not only about awareness, but what opportunities exist there. When we talk about set-asides, we work with mines, for example, where they're struggling to get communities not to strike and end. But some of these baseline studies we do, it's so that we can solve some of the problems, that the communities are basically crying about. Because again, it's about getting these young people involved and then asking them the right questions, or even the communities where we work at. So I think that's basically one of the ways.
Yeah, Eustace? Same one, strengthening our current local value chains and maximizing sustainability.
Look, the one thing that economists will always tell you is that for any product that is made, there are multiple value chains. Mm-hmm. Does not matter what industry the product comes from. And across all of those industries, there are jobs. And there's a possibility of all of those jobs and all of those products being able to contribute to the growth of the economy. And so it's important that, and I'll go back again to the mandate of Panellists African, which is really about ensuring that if there's anyone who makes a purchasing decision, they choose a locally made product. To not only think about the product in terms of where the industry in which it sits, but to think of the multiply effect across all of the industries that supply raw materials and components. And in fact, this is a good example to have the likes of Coca-Cola here, where they... I just gave people free advertising, but it's because I have intimate knowledge of the fact that one of the commitments they've made, for example, is to buy their sugar locally. Mm-hmm. And so think of the sugarcane farms. Think of that value chain on its own. Mm-hmm. That is just but one ingredient. And so you have to look beyond the product and look at the multiplier effect in terms of the value chains, because there are jobs created across all of those industries. That's why people were arguing that the health promotions levy or the sugar tax as we know it, the impact thereof was not only on that which we see at face value, but there are thousands of jobs because of the extensive value chain involved. And people have to think along those lines. Yeah.
But what are some of the challenges in sustainable sourcing?
Look, some of the challenges includes availability of that which we require as a sourcing specialist, as a procurement person who needs to take a decision to source sustainably, and that then requires all of us to start contributing to the availability of that which is required. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about, and I'll go back to issues around global supply chain disruptions. There are raw materials and components that we require to produce some of the things that we make in the country. They are not necessarily available. And even those that are in a position to can invest so that those can be made in the country and can be available in the country will not do so unless they know that the demand will exist. And so our role as Panellists African, and I assume that is why I was invited to be part of this panel, is to try and talk to the hearts and minds of South Africans to say, if you are making a purchasing decision daily, think about where the product comes from. Because that way you are helping us not only retain the jobs that exist in the industries that are already doing well, but to create new industries. And those industries includes those that will address those sustainable sourcing challenges that we have that speak to availability of everything that we require to help us make products locally. So the value chains, the impact, the dependabilities, the multiplier effect tells you that, I mean, no one is going to invest in any capacity. No one is going to invest in the setting up of any new factory if they don't have the absolute assurance that someone will come in and buy.
Yeah. Sanele, how can sustainable sourcing drive community development as well as economic resilience?
I think for me it needs to be balanced because, there's entities that expect that SMMEs will be, ready to supply whatever they need. However, I feel that there's a lot of training and development in terms of that needs to happen in terms of getting the suppliers ready, because a lot of SMMEs are either youth again, are either startups. You cannot expect a startup to supply SPA, for example, without having some form of enterprise supply development program. Because by the time you say to them, because again, the communities will strike. If they do strike, they will say, we want to put our apples on the shelves. But if they don't meet the requirements of SPA, already they will fail. So I think for me, there needs to be a balance between the two, between the supplier and basically the guys that would give an opportunity to some of these SMMEs. But I think the enterprise development programs play a crucial role in getting our SMMEs ready to supply. Because there's also issues of compliance, there's issues of meeting the requirements that are asked by some of these organizations. So I think for me, it's important then to say organizations need to invest more in enterprise development to ensure that compliance is met, but also they need to train more in terms of these SMMEs that need to basically ensure that there's sustainability in terms of sustainability sourcing, rather.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you both, Eustace, starting off with you, what are some of the challenges that businesses can expect when they move towards sustainable sourcing?
Some of the challenges includes finding competitive pricing. It includes finding quality products that will satisfy the need for which the products are being bought. Some of the challenges includes availability of that which you require at the time at which you require it. I mean, if you think of the fashion industry, the clothing and textile industry, there's fast fashion. Sustainable sourcing in that environment means you need to be able to get your hands on it quickly, whilst consumers still demand it. And those are just some of the challenges that will need to be addressed for procurement people, such that when they want to go the route of sustainable sourcing, they know that they will get it at a competitive price, it will be the right quality, but most importantly, they will get it as and when they need it.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Sanele?
And most probably we would need to also define what sustainable sourcing is, because then in us maybe unpacking what that is, we could find legs that exist there. But I think for me it's also about figuring out a way of how do we make sure that from not only compliance, what needs to be sourced, what is sustainable sourcing, because we may say that people must go green. What does that mean? If my product has been manufactured and I've been using coal to manufacture it, how do I convert from coal usage to a renewable usage? And again, it's costly. I think just transition is very costly. But again, speaking from the youth perspective, as we speak about just transition, we don't want to be left out as young people, but also we want to be funded. We deal with young people that come up with innovative solutions. And part of the sustainable sourcing says that they need funds to convert whatever innovation they have into a sustainable product. So I think also in terms of organizations, and when I say organizations, I don't mean that the responsibility is on organizations alone. I think that SMMEs, young people must take part, or entrepreneurs must take part and look for better ways to make sure that whatever they are supplying in terms of sustainable sourcing is meeting the requirements of whoever is demanding it.
Oh, yes, oh, yes. Let's get a parting shot now. Final question for both of you. Eustace, I'll start off with you. Just a comment as well on this topic in its entirety and looking at, tracing the value chain locally and all of the myriad of advantages that come forth from that, not just for the environment, but for community development, economic resilience.
Look, if I bring it closer to home for what I do on a day-to-day basis, otherwise I will have failed in my duties, is that for us as a buy local campaign, the importance thereof is even entrenched in our criteria. When we vet companies to become members of Panellists South African, we look at a few things. The two critical ones which are obvious is the product must be made in South Africa, the quality must be of a superior level, it must comply with that which is required for that industry. But most importantly, the product itself or the company itself must ensure that they help us preserve the environment. So it's a few things that you can implement: reuse material, production processes, dispose of waste responsibly, just help us reduce the carbon footprint. We do look at that. So I represent a base of companies that are all, responsible when it comes to ensuring that, as much as we're saying people must buy from them so that they can retain the jobs they have, they can keep producing, they can keep rendering the services that they render. But as demand increases, they will then be in a position to can employ more people. We also have that responsibility. We're working with a company now that has a huge target sitting on their backs around how do they decarbonize, because their biggest client sits in the EU, where they said to them by 2025, if they do not produce results, that they're going to change how they do things. I mean, the just transition that he was talking about is something that they have to comply with. So all of those then have become imperatives that you can't divorce from what we do as Panellists South African, and which is about sourcing. I mean, Panellists South African is about what are you consuming on a day-to-day basis? Where is it coming from? Are you contributing to the growth of the economy? If you buy a product that comes from China, sorry, I picked on China, you are creating jobs in China. And basically that's what we're saying to people. And so my parting shot is really about the people thinking about the overall impact of their purchasing decisions. If you're buying from, and this is my selling shot, if you're buying from a company that affiliates with us, you know that you're buying a high quality product, jobs are created in the process, but that company is working with us to ensure that they contribute to the sustainability of the environment, to the creation of jobs, to the employment of young people, to them getting employed such that they can acquire skills. So the benefits are really enormous and they're endless.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Sanele?
Yeah, I think for me, my parting shot's really about realizing that community is not just about spinach at the back of the house. It's not about handing out some, goodies to the community. I think we need to move to a stage where we really develop communities for their economical involvement, for economical participation, right? So that we don't just assume that they need water when they don't need water. We don't assume that they need school shoes when they don't need school shoes. So I think for me, it's critical that our kind of community engagement needs to go to the level down in terms of baseline study, engage with the community, ask them the right questions. Because I think at the heart of every organization is community. And if you want to localize and you want to make sure that there's no strikes, well, they're a real lead. Those ones are the biggest threats in everything that we do. But people don't realize they want to have problems first, then they go and solve the problems. But if we can think ahead, there's a quote that says it's better to be prepared for an opportunity and not have one than to have an opportunity and not be prepared. For me, I think really, really the opportunity is there, but we must just prepare ourselves to say, how do we then tackle the opportunity when it comes? But before even the opportunity, how do we capacitate, train, give skills to our young people so that then they can partake into the issues of sustainability?
Wow. Round of applause for Sanele and Eustace. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wow.